call to worship this morning comes from the words of Michael Werner. Humanism is a grander vision of life. It is a devotion to humanity and the biosphere that humanity is part of. It is our passionate commitment to the best ideas that are supported by what experience, science, and civilization have taught us. Humanism is larger than any of us. We have a duty to continue humanism's evolving tradition, which has inspired countless individuals to make the world better. At the same time, it motivates us to fill our lives with transcendent purpose for a meaningful, exuberant existence that makes life worth living. First thing I have to do is note that there's a deletion in the program. So the other day I ran across this wonderful book called The Humanist, which was exactly what I wanted. And so I ordered it via Amazon. And it said it would arrive by 9 p.m. last night. And it didn't. And I told my wife this morning, yeah, Amazon, right? They're perfect. And she said, did you check the mailbox? The P.O. box? I said, no. So it actually arrived at the Clinton post office at 5:43 a.m. yesterday morning. And I never checked the mailbox. And of course, I closed today. So I promise the next time I speak on humanism, I will bring it and I will donate it to the church library. So anyway. So I want to start with reading from the American Humanist Society's 10 Commitments preamble. This life in this world is our central defining focus. Each one of us is responsible for the collective welfare of humanity, other beings, and the resources of our shared planet. We value freedom, reason, and tolerance, and it is our responsibility to develop this heritage for ensuing generations. The 10 Commitments represents our shared humanistic values and principles that promote a democratic world in which every individual's worth and dignity is respected, nurtured, and supported, and where human freedom and ethical responsibility are natural aspirations for everyone. So I just finished reading a book called Religion for Atheists. And it's one of those books that my wife looks across the room and says, what are you reading now? But it's a wonderful book by French writer Alain de Botton. And in the book, he says that even those of us who don't subscribe to formal religious beliefs nonetheless have much to learn from religions. In particular, how their beliefs are codified and made accessible, and how the rituals, practices, icons, and scriptures remind us daily that we as human beings, deeply flawed and with short attention spans, can be better and grow deeper in our faith, whatever that might be. Just a slight breeze. We no longer have to be brought into line by the threat of hell or the promise of paradise, de Botton writes. We merely have to be reminded that it is we ourselves, that is, the most mature and responsible parts of us, who want to live the sort of life which we once imagined supernatural beings demanded of us. An adequate evolution of morality from superstition to reason should mean recognizing ourselves as the authors of our own moral commandments. And so religions have developed rituals and readings, and importantly, easy to digest codifications of belief. The most famous of these, of course, is the 10 Commandments. They are the bedrock of the morality of Jews and Christians, to be discussed in services, printed on calendars, and in some cases, in violation of separation of church and state, on courthouse walls. But we'll get to that later. They distill morality into short, punchy lists of just enough beliefs to remember and not too many to forget. In recognition of the power of concentrating a philosophy into 10 or so bullet points, there have been many attempts to rebrand the 10 Commandments. The physicist and philosopher Sean Carroll, who calls himself a poetic naturalist, proposed 10 considerations in his wonderful book, The Big Picture. We as Unitarian Universalists have, of course, been living by our 7 and now 8 principles for many years. Ours conveniently fit on a pocket card, which you can pick up on your way out if you like. In that spirit, the American Humanist Association drafted its own version called the 10 Commitments. It is a secular answer to the 10 Commandments, and like the 10 Commandments, it is imperfect and open to widely divergent interpretations. But it is worth examining it as one roadmap to secular morality and how we can practice it every day. You'll notice there's a large overlap between Unitarian Universalism and humanism, and I think it's instructive to look at how our principles dovetail with those. The word commitment is deliberate and instructive. A commandment is a dictate that comes on high. In the case of the 10 Commandments, from God via Moses via stone tablets. A commitment is something we make to ourselves and to each other. It is a voluntary agreement to live by guidelines we have arrived at through our own reason and deliberation. I think of commitments like a compass. They guide us, but you need to watch the needle and the landscape, constantly recalibrating your path. A commandment is more like a GPS. They bring us to the door and announce, you've arrived at your destination. Humanism says that this is our only life, and that we are responsible for how we behave in it. Humanism says the only lifeline we have is each other. The preamble to the Humanist Manifesto states that humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without supernaturalism, affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good of humanity. I'm going to discuss these 10 commitments today, not every one of them and not in great detail on all of them. The list is in the front of your program, and we put a link to the more expanded version in the newsletter. Melissa, can we add it to the chat? Sure. Okay, thanks. So what I want to do today is kind of take a broad view of this list, how it matches up with our UU principles. I also want you, as I'm doing it, I want you to think about how you might apply these principles in your life, which ones you might want to practice more of, and which ones you practice too much. Just as a confession, critical thinking would be mine. My wife often reminds me that I overthink everything, to which I reply, do you think so? Really? So I'm going to read these commitments as a list, but if you notice in the diagram on your program, these commitments form a wheel, not a numbered, prioritized list. You can start from anywhere and move in any direction you please. They are all equally worthy, all equally valid as a starting or ending point. But because time is linear, I have to start somewhere. So I'll use the traditional start at the top and read clockwise. They are empathy, critical thinking, ethical development, peace and social justice, service and participation, altruism, humility, environmentalism, global awareness, and responsibility. There will be a quiz later, but it will be open book, so you should be all right. So looking at these commitments, it's kind of hard to argue with any of them. We nod our heads at each other, agreeing that these are principles that should guide us every day. You notice too, this list is more vague than, say, thou shalt not kill or steal. But that's the point. Humanists believe that we are responsible for our own lives, our own beliefs, our own systems of morality. We arrive at these beliefs and morals through reason, through culture, through our interactions with others in the world, through the best parts of each of us that want to care and be cared for. What humility or environmentalism means to you exactly might be different than what it means to me. As Unitarian Universalists, we are accustomed to joining together under a large tent of beliefs and ideas and visions of the world. Each of us is engaged in our own search for truth and meaning. If I asked each of you today to list your 10 most important commitments, I doubt any two lists would be identical. And as you can see from these, there's a lot of overlap between these commitments and our UU principles. That's probably not a coincidence. Of the 30 signers of the original Humanist Manifesto, 9 of them were Unitarian ministers. You can find elements of our second principle, justice, equality, and compassion in human relations, in several of these humanist commitments: empathy, altruism, peace, and social justice. Many of us would extend that principle and our empathy and altruism to our relations with animals in the natural world. The 10 commitments define empathy as attempting to understand other people's experiences as our own, which itself harkens back to the ancient golden rule that forms the core of many great religions. Altruism is the unselfish concern for the welfare of others without expectation of reward, recognition, or return. The critical thinking commitment reminds me of our fourth principle, our own commitment to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I've often thought we packed a lot into that phrase: free, responsible, truth, meaning, all of them subject to much debate and discussion. But through critical thinking, the Humanist Society says, we learn to raise questions that are clear and precise, to gather information, and to reason about the information we receive in a way that tests it for truthfulness, accuracy, and utility. It's probably not a coincidence that that's what I do every day as a journalist. I often think that of all the professions I could have chosen, none would have been quite fitting me as well as journalism did. And none of them would have tolerated, actually celebrated, my critical, sometimes curmudgeonly personality. I picked one of the few careers where being cranky is an asset, not a liability. Environmentalism, too, will sound familiar to you ears, used to hearing our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. As the Humanist Society reminds us, we all share the same home, planet Earth. Just as we depend on the planet to sustain us with its precious resources, this planet's ecosystem depends on us to be good stewards and take responsibility for the human impact, humans have had on our shared planet. In the summer of heat waves and wildfires in Europe, 1,000-year floods in Missouri and Kentucky, record temperatures in the Arctic, our commitment to environmentalism and global awareness has never been more urgent. There is, as they say, no planet B, and any list of commitments to live by must include our commitment to keeping this planet a hospitable place, not just for humans, but for all life. Each of us, the expanded 10 commitment says, must acknowledge our collective and individual mistakes, repair past damages, and purposefully work toward cultivating the rich, diverse, and resilient ecosystems. There are two more commitments I want to discuss briefly because they remind us of both our faults and our ability to overcome them. The first is humility, recognizing that we are all flawed and encouraging us to see that not just in ourselves, not just in others, but in ourselves. Humility, the 10 commitments say, is robust self-awareness, awareness of our strengths and weaknesses, our faults and merits. Humility involves setting aside personal pride and overcoming our egos to embrace gratitude for what we have and appreciate others for who they are. In being humble, we recognize our own value in relation to others. Inherently, we are neither better nor worse than anyone else. And lastly, I find particular resonance in the commitment, ethical development. What the 10 commitments, as well as the 10 commandments, recognize is that each of us is, every day for the rest of our lives, a work in progress. We are not perfect yet, and I won't be the first one to tell you that none of us ever will be. But what that means is that every sunrise delivers another opportunity to become a better person, to take another baby step toward that vision of the person we want to be and to model for others. As the Humanist Society says, each day brings chances to reflect on, evaluate, and learn from our personal choices and the impact they have on the world around us. I know when I'm lying wide awake at 3 a.m., kicking myself for some dumb or hurtful thing I said the day before, I'm learning from my choices and understanding their impact on the people I share this planet with. Our third UU principle hints at this and expands on it in encouraging spiritual growth, not just as individuals, but as a congregation. And that's a critical point, one that Di Batan and others make about the importance of belonging to a group of similar-minded people who can encourage and correct each other on this winding, haphazard road of life we all traverse. Religions have always recognized the positive power of peer pressure, bringing people together in the same room or the same lawn to hear the same words and sing the same songs that will help synchronize their beliefs and behavior. As Di Batan said in Religion for Atheists, there is so much that we would like to do, but never end up doing, and so many ways of behaving that we subscribe to in our hearts, but ignore in our day-to-day lives. In a world obsessed with freedom, there are few voices left that dare to exhort us to act well. If these commitments are meaningful to you, feel free to tack them up on your bathroom mirror to remind you each morning to be the person, as the bumper sticker says, your dog thinks you are. If not, please at least practice the commitment of environmentalism and place them in an approved recycling container. But whatever your beliefs, I hope these commitments can in some way help you to do good each day, to become more committed to what you believe, to show more compassion and empathy and understanding to those around you and to yourself. Amid the myriad temptations that yank us every day from doing the things we know we should do, I hope these commitments can nudge us back to that path. I hope they can help us be better than we were yesterday and help us fulfill our first and overarching UU principle that tells us to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Thank you. And now, join us in hymn number 300, With Heart and Mind. With Heart and Mind.
With heart and mind and voice and hand, may we this time and place transcend, to make our purpose understood, a mortal search for mortal good, a firm commitment to the goal of justice, freedom, peace for all. A mind that's free to seek the truth, a mind that's free in age and youth, to choose a path no threat impedes, wherever light of conscience leads. Our martyrs died so we could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart whose search makes love the spirit of our church, where we can go and each one's gift is sanctified and spirits lift, where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside.
Now we'll just spend a few moments in reflection, in some quiet meditation. What I'd like to ask is for you to kind of think about the commitments that you live by every day, and which ones you might, which of these commitments we talked about today might resonate with you, and which values you put into place every day, and where do you fall short, and how can you get yourself using your commitments to a better place tomorrow. So just spend a few moments. So I'm interested to hear afterward some of your thoughts about your commitments. So now we're gonna do our offering. The words today come from Kayla Parker. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit ourselves to ensure the funds we gather collectively to do greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we give in love and in hope. And now we'll extinguish the chalice. Please join with me in the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry on our hearts until we meet again. Our final words come from the Reverend Kendall L.R. Gibbons. Humanism is not just a function of the mind. The life well lived has emotional, aesthetic, and moral fulfillment, as well as mental and physical satisfaction, and these we ignore at our peril. Love for those closest to us and compassion for all creatures, the capacity to be touched by beauty and repulsed by ugliness, and the longing for justice in the world and honor in oneself are as essential to spiritual maturity and lasting happiness as is intellectual reason or physical health. Blessed be.
Actually, I'm probably just going to leave them all together and turn their sound off. So you can tell the Zoom people to feel free to chat amongst yourselves.
Zoom people, please feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Well,